Welcome back. The bit where the truck falls off the bridge, as this will always be known. Welcome to the last session. The last session, but not the kind of wrapping up. We think that's a bad idea. It's more a case of seeding things that may grow and expand. But we also wanted to make a moment to thank people, because there are so many people to thank, and to reflect, and also to join some, to weave some threads back together, I guess. So I am joined by Morag Anderson. I am joined by Tanisha Hill-Jarrett. We're going to start with Tanisha, going back to where we sort of started on Tuesday. And I'm just going to hand over to you, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So, hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. On Tuesday, at the end of my presentation, which focused on attention and imagination and its intersections with Afrofuturism, I posed 4 questions to the audience. And some people responded to them. You could see them out there on the wall using sticky notes. I also circulated that online and got some nice responses. And so what I wanted to do was just kind of summarize what we found and then pose some questions for us to kind of take away with us. And so just to quickly go over the questions, the first one was just, what possible future do you imagine, and how do we center the needs of those people that are most marginalized? The second question was, what conditions in society need to change for us all to have an equal chance of making it to the future? And if you think back to my presentation, part of what I talked about was time inequity, time poverty, and how that impacts our ability to dream and imagine. And then the next question was about what methodology or approach you would use to upend these different systems of oppression to create this possible future. And then the last question was about what questions remain for you. What are you taking away from this? Are there lingering questions? And so, that's already up. Okay, cool. This is just kind of like a bubble of all the different responses. We had kind of a nice little smattering of responses. So people from Ireland, the UK, the United States, South Africa, Indonesia, Australia, and it was all across the spectrum of age, which I thought was really nice. I think there were about like 20, counting the people that responded out there as well, about like 20 respondents. And so hoping to collect more information on this. But I really think, kind of to summarize things, is that the responses actually nicely highlighted the tension of Sue's work, so the work that she presented today, about whether or not we should leave things broken as is or try to mend it. Some people actually quoted Audre Lorde's "The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house." People brought up themes around anarchy, right? So on the one side, kind of disrupting the system, upending the system, building from a new space overall. We also saw people that responded that we as ourselves kind of need to look inward and then go out towards the system. And so we as a society must be more loving, more empathetic towards one another, and really kind of changing our own points of view. And it actually made me think about Sissy's presentation from today, which was also very amazing, about sacrificial protection and this possibility of the eroding, right? And as it's an ultimate act of love. And so maybe it's required for us to kind of erode what we know and let it kind of fall apart to rebuild from a space of possibility. There was a clear theme, I think, that we must center the needs of those people who are most marginalized in society and eliminate those existing power imbalances. And what it made me think of was the work of Bell Hooks. So if you're not familiar with her, she's a Black woman that was born in Kentucky, which is the southern region of the United States. She oftentimes wrote about her lived experiences as a Black woman and wrote about issues related to race, racism, sexism, classism. And she oftentimes talked about existing in the margins. And I very quickly want to read a piece from her Feminist Theory from Margin to Center. And so these are her thoughts on marginality. So she said, to be in the margin is to be part of the whole, but outside the main body. As Black Americans living in a small Kentucky town, the railroad tracks were a daily reminder of our marginality. Across those tracks were paved streets, stores we could not enter, restaurants we could not eat in, and people we could not look directly in our face or in their face. Across those tracks was a world where we could work as maids, janitors, prostitutes, as long as it was in a service capacity. We could enter that world, but we could not live there. We always had to return back to the margins, to cross the tracks, to shacks and abandoned houses on the edge of town. These were the laws to ensure our return. Not to return was the risk of being punished. Living as we did on the edge, we developed a particular way of seeing reality. We looked both from the outside in and from the inside out. We focused our attention on the center as well as the margin. We understood both. This mode of seeing reminded us that of the existence of a whole universe, a main body made up of both the margin and center. Our survival depended on an ongoing public awareness of the separation between the margin and center, and an ongoing private acknowledgement that we were a necessary, vital part of that whole. And so in this, she also talks about the margins as a space of radical openness. And if we think about that space, I think we think about things like indigenous knowledge systems. From that space comes communities that prioritize play. I had some conversations with Atlantic Fellows about the importance also of intuition. I really think about it as honestly as a space of possibility. I also think about it as a space of where people who are living with disabilities exist as well. And so really being open to the margins and bringing the margins to the center. And then one question that really stuck out to me was that somebody wrote was about unlearning rules. And they basically said that the rules appear to protect those who make things that are only relevant for those who follow the rules. And so I think the question I leave you with is, what rules must we unlearn to create a better future? So.
Tanisha, stay at the mic for a sec. So what's next with this piece of exploration?
Yes, I'm going to continue collecting information. I'm also, so in my presentation, I talked about Radical Imagination, the group that I'm doing with Black women, and so we'll be doing 2.0 of that. I'm also very much interested in using radical imagination to reimagine healthcare systems and what that might look like, particularly within a US context, but also zooming out and thinking more globally. So I think that having this global perspective is really important, and I'm hoping to build on that. So.
And if people want to fill in the questionnaire afterwards, they can do that using the QR code?
You can do it on the sticky note. There's also the QR code out there that you can scan and fill it out online as well. And it'll just be open, so I'll continuously collect responses. Yep.
Fantastic. Keep the mic.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank the Atlantic Institute who made it possible for Tanisha and all the Atlantic Fellows to be here. I'd like to thank them for making the effort to travel from Thailand and Nepal and so many places that I can't list, and making the effort to be in this space at this time in proximity. I'd also like to thank the Scottish Poetry Library, who made it possible for Morag Anderson to be here and reflect each day and also ask really good questions after the tightrope walker. It was good though, it's a good question, I like that question. Would you?
Hello again. Tracy Naledi this morning shared some of her Zulu heritage with us in saying, "I am because you are." That really resonated with me. So I am here because you are. Thank you. We also heard from Louise Dempsey earlier on about the quiet path and perinatal loss, and that probably sat quite heavy with many of us for a while. So just to give you a little bit of a flag, a wee content, the poem that I'm about to read is because I am working with a Scottish charity called the Canmore Trust, whose focus is on suicide prevention and postvention. And the reason I am involved is because it was established by one of my old professors, Professor of Oral Medicine, and his son, aged 24, just before COVID, killed himself. And his dad, John Gibson, set up the Canmore Trust, which is fantastic. However, I don't want to add to your burden, so I'm going to steal Chris Bailey's brag and say that by the end of my recitation of this handful of poems, you're going to feel something, and it might be love. Keep that in mind. So this poem is titled Glasgow Coma Scale. For those of you who don't know, it's a measure of consciousness following acute brain injury. 3 and below, you're dead. That slight grey area above that, you're not viable for life, but your organs might be useful for donation, so you might be kept resuscitated. Glasgow Coma Scale. First on scene, emergency services score you 6 and leave without me. I tail the silence of blue lights, abandon the car in the ambulance bay. Trauma team score you 4, pupils not yet fixed, aggressively cared for to limit the risk of cardiac arrest. Your young organs are ready to harvest. I want to seal my mouth to your dented skull, suck shape into cranial plates, ask about the day we lay naked under leaves, tasting the age of rain. Placed bets on when the lone apple would fall from the winter-bound tree. You already knew and kept it from me. Focus on the love. Sissy Fu spoke of caritas, care, charity this morning, and can we expand our love into institutions where voices are often unheard? This little poem is called Little Cuckoo. Your mother fought, I'm sure, but lost to slack white jaws, tongues thin and sharp as fish bones. There is no 6 a.m. tick of water warming pipes in this care home, dank and foul as rotting colons. I would feather a nest for you, little cuckoo, bring a feast of worms, but my blackbird beak is crammed with stones. There's been a lot of talk about social inequalities. And again, to refer back to Tracy Naledi, and something that Tanisha has mentioned all throughout her time here, is poverty, food insecurity, and health inequalities. This next poem is actually written for my mum. I got into dentistry because my mum, from a very young age, wore a full set of false teeth, and my biggest goal through my studies was to make her a new set of teeth. It's probably the most uncomfortable thing after childbirth, to be honest, making her duff teeth. But she worked in a meat processing factory in Glasgow, and once, during a time of acute poverty, stole food from that factory to feed my siblings and I. She, of course, went without. Poverty, health inequality, and early mortality go hand in hand. She, of course, died young. The shoplifter. Flaccid light and piss reek seep in from the communal hall. It takes both cold hands to form a grip, turn the key, unlock the door. The kids still asleep in a pleat of thin limbs under coats and sheets and a lanced heart nailed to the wall. I take the pack of sausages from the waistband of my skirt, bend carefully to pick apart damp knots in oversized boots, but still dislodge the bloodied wad of my makeshift sanitary pad. I slide down the wall, pull my knees to the ladder of my ribs, and bleed. We experienced Mike Hanrahan's collective today just before lunch, the interpretation of the sound of dementia, how fantastic was that? Awe and wonder embodied in all of the artists there. Visiting time. I lie flat, cup the juts of hip bone in my palms hollow, fingertip the slow waltz of femoral pulse. I hear her rise. The carpet's soft pile does not absorb the sound of remorse. It is time. She crouches, joints crackle like dry leaves licked by a bonfire's tongue. She was 6 when I teased a slice of glass from a knee that bled Halloween red. I wrap my arms thin as willow sticks around her neck, feel blood drum like a samba de roda beneath skin, warm as churned butter. I forget now which one of us is daughter. Finally, a proper love poem. Some of you may know that 4 years ago, my husband suffered a stroke as a result of a vertebral artery dissection, very unexpected in every way. Young survivors of stroke have a higher risk of dementia. I don't know if he knows that. We haven't spoken about it. Unspoken for Ross. Your fingers twitch. This is how I know you are asleep. It brings me close to an honesty not shared in daylight. When I wait for the hedge thick with noise to quieten, for wind-fallen apples to soften, for the time to be right. Instead, I tell the wet caramel of the tree's rotting stump and our white-washed gable that you are no longer the bright flush bordering life's fresh scratch. You have lost more than you can name. Still, I curve to your back as a hand cups a flame. Feel the love. Thank you for listening.
So just before I hand over, I would like to thank you for this session, Morag and Tanisha. I'd like to thank all the people that stood on this stage over the last 3.5 days. I'd like to thank all the artists that contributed to the exhibition spaces. I'd particularly like to make a big thanks to Ed Cashy and 1 in 6 by 2030, who did an extraordinary thing in a very zero amount of time. I'd like to thank all the people involved in Upstairs, Emma Eager particularly, I think. I'd also like to thank people who have not been in this building. So we have been handing Christopher around the country like a baton or a small child or something. And he has been in West Cork with Ullin Arts Centre. He's been in Newcastle West. He's been with Grania Hope in her project in Limerick. He's been in Limerick City with the Arts Office. He's been in Galway with Salter, Helium Arts, and Create in Tume, and then he came back. I'd like to thank all of those people who organised that at speed. I'd like to thank Creative Ireland who supported that bit. And I'd like to end and hand over to the people that are really responsible for all of this. So we shall leave the stage, Tanisha and Morag, thank you, and hand over to Brian Lawlor and Ian Robertson.
Science is universal. It is a method, not a set of beliefs about the world. There is no Western scientific method or Eastern scientific method. There is just science. It's a monumentally clever technique that humans have invented to combat our evolved tendency to seek confirmation of our thoughts and beliefs. It is because of science alone that the average world lifespan has risen from around 30 in the 19th century to around 73 in 2020. That's across the world, the average. Without science, almost all of us in this room would have been dead for decades. But a method that elicits laws about how the material world works is not capable of supplying shared meaning and common sense of purpose that billions of people need to be confident, hopeful, and inspired to continue this remarkable journey that is building human civilization. The subjective world of human consciousness has so far eluded the great unifying theories of physics. In fact, it is a huge pain in the ass for them. And there are philosophers like Thomas Nagel, New York University, who say that human consciousness is the process of the universe becoming aware of itself. And that is the domain in which we spend our lives. In fact, it is all that we truly experience, our own arena of consciousness. And the creative arts that have joyfully inspired us over this last 3 days, the music, the visual, the dance, the verbal, the poetry, the auditory, they lead us in an often joyful but sometimes terrifying voyage around this remarkable and largely unexplored arena. These experiences penetrate to often unconscious inklings, intuitions, and complex responses that the linear and beautiful verbal, analytic, mathematical worlds of science cannot. But there is one thing which science and arts have in common. They are both highly moral and noble pursuits, done for their own sake, for the love of discovery, for the love of truth. Not in the main for tawdry instrumental purposes of fame or wealth. If you are extrinsically driven by the desire for fame or wealth in either domain, you will surely burn up on atmospheric re-entry. The artists and scientists who have contributed to this glorious week, none of them are in this for the money or fame or status. Quite the reverse. They labor through huge obstacles to find their nuggets of truth. Finally, we would not be here today without the remarkable contagion of goodness that Chuck Feeney released from his laboratory of virtue. This is a glorious pandemic that we embrace and celebrate. And we need all of your help to make sure that Chuck Feeney's ambassadors in this remarkable Creative Brain Week, Dominic Campbell and Dee Kelleher, can continue their incredible creativity to produce Creative Brain Weeks 4, 5, and beyond for many years. Can I ask you to stand up and applaud them and the great Chuck Feeney? And now, Global Brain Health Institute would not exist without Brian Lawlor, and I'm delighted to hand over to you.
Okay, you'll be glad to hear that this is the end of the speeches. So we're here at the end of Creative Brain Week 2024. And I just want to offer some final reflections. It's a little bit of a stream of consciousness, so just bear with me. I think it's been a huge success, and I think largely down to Dominic Campbell, B. Kelleher, Creative Aging International, but also the wonderful participation of the artists, the scientists, and the audience. I particularly want to give a shout out to the Atlantic Institute, to Catherine and to Gemma and all the fellows who've come from all over the world. It's been wonderful to have you here, but also the staff and the team that B and Dominic have assembled here, who've worked with us over the last 3 to 4 days. I mean, it's been wonderful and really made this a huge success, each and every one of you. As Ian has said, this wouldn't have happened without Chuck Feeney and GBHI and the vision of the Atlantic Fellowship, and I was extremely grateful. Will always remain grateful to Chuck Feeney Atlantic Philanthropies. Also want to thank the Provost, Linda Doyle, who has been with us, who's supported us every step of the way, and also Harry Hartford for his generous support. So in terms of just reflections over the last number of days, and as I say, it is a bit of a stream of consciousness, what did we learn about attention, love, and connection? So in terms of looking back and looking forward, it's always a very good exercise when you're looking back and looking forward. I think Chris was talking about time this morning, earlier this afternoon, but it made me think about the passage of time. And, time is essentially the progression of events from the past into the future. And the big events that have progressed from the past into the future for us really has been Creative Brain Week. And I look back on 2022 and now 2024, and just the enormous growth and development and innovation that's happened with Creative Brain Week. This year, 4 satellites, a contemporaneous satellite in Egypt, 3 other satellites to come. Hopefully in future years, more and more satellites. But really importantly, we had the Pratchett Prize, we have exhibitions, live theatre. It's just amazing, the expansion and growth that's happened over time. And now Tanisha Hill-Jarrett also talked about time. And during the week, we were reminded about the importance of time equity, time poverty, and how many people are overworked or have less time to rest, and the value of time. And when we are pressed for time, the impact that has on our brains and on our brain health. But on the other hand, Paul Dockery thought about the dividend of mind wandering, mindfulness and flow. And in a sense, arts can help create time for us, expand time for us a little bit, to help us rest and recover, to replenish our brains and to grow. Susan Maximin asked a really important question on Monday about how art can change our brains and behavior and how we might use this for good. And I was thinking again, in terms of the metaphor of time, if arts and creativity can give us more time, be more in the moment and flow, looking back through reminiscence, through mind wandering, perhaps arts and creativity can help tackle this time poverty and time inequity across the world that's negatively impacting on everybody's brain health. So the idea of creating more time for our brain health, I think, is really, really important. Time for self, time for others, time for connection. This will all translate into better brain health for all of us. So on day 2, the theme was connection. And there was a lot of connection across the different ages. And I think we had an amazing immersive experience with virtual reality, where there was a sense of accelerating the experience of time, while at the same time staying in the moment, in your own body, connecting to nature and to your own body and your sense of self. And I wondered, what are the impacts on your brain health of perspective shifting and awe and slowing us down to the rhythm of a simple breath and the heartbeat. I imagine that this could be really, really powerful for our brain health. But as was discussed, we really do have to look at the measurement, the impact in healthy populations and in clinical populations. So yesterday was probably my favorite day because we had an opportunity to meet with children from around the city, locally here, who actually had the chance to experience My Brain Robbie, this incredible creative cartoons produced by Eleanor Bayan, who spoke to yesterday. And it was an in-camera session, so not many people got to see it, but there was amazing creativity of the children as they produced such positive messages about brain health through theatre performance and through videos. And it was truly amazing. And again, what struck me was the importance of time and timing. These children are our future, and we need to get the brain health message in there at the right time. Those brains are so plastic. These people are so, this age group are so open and so curious. And to come to today, we were talking about love, care, and again, time, how love and care, it's not a transaction, it's a transformation, it's a resource, but love and care need time. So time is space. We need time to think, to reflect, and as Louise beautifully said to us earlier this afternoon, time is such a precious gift. So we need to create more time, more space for our brain health. So the end of Creative Brain Week 2024, it's quite sad, right? No? Oh, okay. Not really, and as Ian has said, and I think Dominic, I don't think Dominic knows that we're going to go to 2025, 2026, 2027 yet. But I hope that we can. I hope we can with everybody's help and support. But this has been a week in time, and that's told us that we need to make more time to create, to enjoy, to be, not just to do. Time to pay attention, to connect, to care, to repair, and to love, because all of this is going to be good for our brain health. So all I want to say is that I hope that we will see you all next year. We're looking forward to this for 2025. And Dominic will have new themes, new ideas, and new imaginings. So thank you all very much. Bye-bye.